Today we're going to be looking at these guys.
All right, we're going to do a little experimenting today. I'm going to show you a couple of my favorite lights. Number one is this Godox S60 bicolor. There's a ballast that goes along with this, but basically really efficient Fresnel. It's, if you're familiar with dado lights from back in the day, an LED version of that. Love that. I have two sets of these that I use basically on every shoot. Parallel beam adapter for this guy, which we're going to go over and show some tests with. These are pretty cool. These are the MS60 lights they just came out with. This kit here is kind of a, whoever engineered this kit, my hat's off to you. 60 watt lights, same as these, but a different form factor. And we'll get into all the little intricacies. And then what we're also going to do is test these next to one another. I always like doing comparisons from a known light source, or if we're testing lenses, a known lens, and comparing and contrasting with something new so that my brain kind of starts to get an idea around, efficiency, sharpness, all just the general usability, all the things. So I know my tools before I go on set. Wait till you see how this thing is organized. So you open this kit and you're like, I don't know what's in here. So first off, the lights are over here on the left. This is the main light unit. There's a switch here. That is the little battery pack, which is USB-C, which is so cool. That's the remaining part of the light, and it's RGB. It includes wireless control. I haven't really gotten into all the intricacies of it, but it is pretty impressively small. Two of them in this kit here. Battery just clicks on. Then there's all the accessories. So you don't have to run battery, you can run AC power. There's no extra ballast, just the plug goes into the back of the unit. We'll look at power output once we're testing them. There's these little front lenses here, which you have the bare cob here. They just click on. Then if you don't want to use those, so there's a little note. Sometimes there's so many little switches on these things, the on, off, the front, the back, kind of don't know where to turn. This is their little Fresnel lens adapter, which is super cool. Attaches with bayonets onto the front, and now you have a little focusing. I mean, come on, that's so cool. And these things will hold barn doors, or they will also hold the projectors from the S60 kit, the little dado light looking projectors. Underneath here, there's more. I feel like I'm on an infomercial right now. So you lift this out, and underneath we have backup batteries. We have all these little magnetic clip-on diffusers. So actually you can see up here, there's 36 by 36, a 10 by 36. So that yellow one will throw a kind of like a shaft of light, a strip, 10 by 60, a tilt shift, a diffuser frame, and then a couple other little grids. And they're all magnetic, and they just pop on to the front. I mean, it's so cool, all these little things. Whoever designed this, like little 60 watt RGB thing. I mean, come on, how cool is that? Then we have little domes that go on the top. Let's turn this bad boy on. So you turn it on, and then you gotta run that down. And there's a little dome light. Little indicator in the back. Tells you your run time, CCT, HSI, gel, RGBW, XY, and different effects. I mean, they pack so much into this little thing. Up top, wait for it, little power cords for running AC power. Sweet. Little stand adapter that just goes on. All right, little stand adapter. All right, so you take your domed light there, right? Oh, wait, no, a little snoot. I mean, come on, they pack so much into this kit. Here's the other cool bit. Little Edison base. So you take that, and you take your plug, and now you can take this whole thing and plug this right into an outlet, and you've got a replacement bulb with a bunch of different effects. Don't forget about the little barn doors, also magnetic. Another little frame, I think that's for the diffuser filters. I mean, super well thought out across multiple levels here. The case is only, I don't know, 14 by 18, maybe 10 inches tall. Very densely packed. Couldn't do that any better. Okay, so here we've got the two lights. This is the new 60R here with the bare cob, just to start with. S60 by, no barn doors. You can see the lensing here, so not a fair fight right now until I start putting some other things on, but just to show you. And then here is the ballast for the SC60. Let's start off at 5500. Let's start at 56, 100% on that. Focus adjustment on S6 these is via the back knob here, so we're going to start full flood. And there's kind of like your size comparison, right? Okay, so what we're looking at here is the S60. This is the bicolor one with the ballast and the built-in lenses. Nice wide throw. You see it actually, so I'm about 8 or 9 feet from my background here. I could probably measure that. And my beam spread is hitting the ceiling and all the way down to the bottom of the sofa here. So for this amount of distance, super wide beam spread. I don't know what it is in specs. I think it's like 40 degrees or something like that. And I'm just going to go through the spot process and I'll show you I don't know what my favorite thing about this is. Another thing, nice hard shadow quality. This is about as hard of a shadow as you'll get from a point source. So great for replicating hard daylight. Really clean, sharp as can be, even back here, which is pretty amazing. You're never going to get that with a reflector from a par or a strobe. You'll never get anything that sharp. So that's definitely one of the things that I'm looking at. Then as I spot down here using the knob on the back, you can see that I've got quite a bit of range. Stays quite even across the beam. Sometimes I will actually add a little bit of diffusion to this to kind of soften out this transition from here to here. I find can be, it's not necessarily like a standard Fresnel. So sometimes I'll add a little bit of light Hampshire frost or something like that to make this transition a little bit more even. So again, full spot. Full flood. Let's just get a quick meter reading here in the center. So I'm at ISO 800, 60th of a second at 5.6.5. Okay, 60th at 5.6.5 in full flood, full spot, a solid 16. Pretty impressive. It looks to me like there's a slight bit of color temperature difference here, although that's probably the ambiance of my room. The studio has terracotta colored floors, so everything in the shadows tends to go a little warm. That's probably what that is. I don't have my color meter here with me, but that's probably what that is. Let's look at the barn doors. Let's look at how it cuts. That's another thing I'm looking at. So this won't have the best cut because I am spotted right now. Okay, working with the barn doors. If I flood this out, you'll see how that spot gets a little bit harder. Starts to get a little weird spill there. But you see, still very controllable. And I am seeing a little bit of that warmth there. Again, I would need a more neutral studio to double check that. A lot of control in your light source there. All right, that's back to full flood. Like I said, 5.6.5 at a 60th of a second. So let's look at the MS60 now. Just resetting some things, going back up to full power. We're at 56. Because it's bare cob, you can see that it's actually even wider than the S60. And we were at 5.6.5 earlier. This is not a fair fight. This is just to get reference here. 60th F4, so stop and a half down. But again, my spread is all the way up to the ceiling there. Okay, so F4 with the bare cob, and you can see the zoom, or you can see the spread there. So let's look at adding a little accessory lens. Okay, so there's our accessory lens. What I do like about this is that I've got like seems to be like a nice even fall off. Again, a little bit of that warmth, which makes me think it's my floors bouncing in a little bit. Shadow is not nearly as sharp as the S60, so it gets sharp here. But from back here, you can see there's a little bit of color fringing, and it's just much more loosely defined shadow. Definitely something I'm looking for when I do my hand puppets. And that is not the zoom. So that is a fixed reflector, and we are, again, same 60 watt, 806. With the first lens, you're actually a stop brighter than the S60. Well, that's pretty cool. Again, I'm not looking at the color modes right now. I'm literally just looking at the 56K light. Okay, so this is the MS60R, again, the new one by Godox. And this is full flood. And you can see that it's not as wide as the S60, nor did I expect it to be. And let's look at that, what that is. Output wise, we're at 565 as our kind of control, 560. So with the Fresnel, we're a stop and a half down from the lens, but we're a half stop down from the S60. Real nice tight spot here. I feel like I see the tiniest little bit of the cob starting to come in here. Nothing, that's just me being really picky about it. Sometimes you'll see that. Really good focus range, so that's full spot. And our full spot here, 60th of a second, 8. We're at full spot. You're kind of comparable with that little output lens. So if you want the output, definitely the accessory lens there is the way to go. So let's look at the shadows here. Shadows here with the Fresnel spotted are never going to be as hard as full flood, which is interesting because on the S60, they're quite hard. Let's go full flood, which should give us a little bit sharper shadow. Yep, but a little bit more fringing. I'd say just roughly half as sharp as the S60. So definitely if you want the sharp shadows, S60 is the way to go. Let's look at some of those accessory lenses. While the build quality on these is good, I would not suggest dropping them. The S60s have a metallic body, pretty robust connectors. They can take some onset abuse. These battery powered ones, the MS60s, yeah, if you dropped it, I think you're going to end up with a lot of pieces. So this is the white one, which is a 36 degree. Doesn't do a whole lot. Kind of smooths that spot out a little bit. This is the 1036. This one might be cool. You can see it's got, as I rotate it, it's got a little bit of a stripe. I wonder if these are supposed to be used with that. There is another little accessory collar. I bet these are not supposed to be used with those, although clearly you can. And this is part of like rummaging around the lights. I like figuring things out rather than reading the instruction manuals, which I can totally do. But this is more fun. 36. This is that 1036, which is quite nice for the gradient. You can see me spinning it there. That's raw. Here is our diffuser frame, which is just clear. Don't need to test that. This is our 10 degree, 60 degree. So a little bit more of a stripe gradient, which is quite nice. Okay, tilt shift. So this actually puts the light source kind of off center. You can see it's throwing the beam to the left. Now it's throwing the beam to the right. All right, so this is the tilt shift, and you can see it kind of throws that beam to the left, to the right, Don't necessarily know when you need it, but cool to have in the bag. This is the purple one, which is a 60 degree. Just kind of like a wider diffuser. It's a 25 degree, which should, yeah, so this one kind of spots it down a little bit more. Overall, nice, lightweight little diffusion frames. Play around with it. Also does have a snoot. So that's just holding the snoot in there. And then of course there's the dome, which just sends the light everywhere. All right, here's my favorite accessory for both of these lights, which is the projector lens. This is an 85, they make a 63, I think they make a 150. I'm usually on this 85 here. And this goes on the front of both of the lights, which we're gonna test right now. And I'm gonna show you why I love this thing so much. Okay, so here we're gonna use the projector, and I'm gonna put it on the S60 first, because that's the light I know. Right now, the little MS60R is just bouncing off the ceiling, giving us a little bit of fill light to work with here. So barn doors come off, you do it one-handed. You don't really need to do it one-handed. This goes in the filter slots, latches on there, and you now have a projector. But I forgot the coolest part. And the coolest part is this iris. So lens manufacturers could learn a thing or two from how beautifully round this iris is. Perfect circle, and we're gonna see that on that wall. So we're working with the projector here. I have the iris in, which we're gonna play with in a little bit. And what I noticed when I put this up was that if I zoom the rear, I don't know if you can see that translating, but there's a couple different things that are happening. If I'm at my full, I have a slightly cold tone. Now, right now I'm going into the middle of the range. It's getting more neutral, and you can see it's filling that iris a little bit better. And then if I go towards full spot, not only does it get darker, but it also gets very warm and actually a little bit off center, which could be a whole number of things. I'm actually going to make a note on all my projectors here that we want the zoom to be right in the middle of the range. Okay, so here's the thing that I love about these projectors. So I have that little iris in, and you can see that I can close that down very dramatically. And if I focus it, I can get a perfect spot. So that spot is about 10 feet away, and with the 85mm lens is, it's the size of my hand. So the spot is probably about 2 inches tall. Pretty impressive. If you're even in closer or with the 150mm lens, you can get that even tighter. But love being able to do that. I can pinpoint a bottle cap, I can pinpoint a label, all kinds of different things. No fringing at all. Just a perfect circle. And you can see it stays sharp around the entire diameter. So now that we have a sharp, I'm just going to go through the back, that flooding thing. Yep, see how it goes off center to the right and gets a little bit blue. And if I go back to spot, off center to the left and a little bit warm. So mid-range is where I want to be. So that's the 85mm lens. Let's look at a 63 as well. So like I said, I have 2 kits of these, and then I have 6 different lenses that go along with them. Okay, that's interesting. So 85, this is a 63, and it looks like that just is a little bit different. Got fascinating differences that I'm also just learning right now. So same light source, same effect. About middle of the road is where we want to be again, and that is full wide and full spot with the 63. So at the full wide on the 63, it actually loses that hard edge. There's the full breadth of the 63mm. Okay, so this is the MS60R with the Fresnel. And then on front of the Fresnel, I actually have clipped that same projector. This is the 63 that we were just using a minute ago. This is one of the things that I don't love about this is a lot of weight off of these little tabs with this little non-locking thing here. And I could definitely see on set, boom, and now you have a bunch of pieces. So I think this is really cool. I would limit this probably to the barn doors. I probably wouldn't suggest this, but you can. And oh God, I think that's sketchy. So you can do it, but I wouldn't suggest it. We're running the projector. This is actually a full flood. Full spot, interestingly, you still get a little bit of that color temperature shift. So full flood is the way to go with this. And then I still have almost the same iris control as I did on the S60. Just down from sharp. I can see there's a little bit of fade off on the bottom there. Relatively even overall. Just let's get out the meter again to see what we get here. 60,288, so two stops less exposure with the iris, but what you lose in power, you definitely gain in control there. I'm going to go back to the S60 now and get that same meter reading. So we were at 60th 288, and we're now at 250th. So 60th 560, stopping. Yeah, so with the projectors, the S60 buys are stop and change more efficient. Okay, so now we're going to test the MS60Rs with battery power, which is the one that's on right now, and AC power. And these are both with the primary lens that we got the most output from right here. That's a fun effect. Okay, so this is battery power, 100%. This is a full battery. 60th at 807, which I think is exactly the same as before. Okay, so this is the AC power. We're at 60th at 807, dead on. So no change in intensity, battery power versus AC power, which is pretty awesome. There's one more thing I was going to test, which is this bad boy. So this is the parallel beam adapter for the S60. This is super great for going long distances and also using the no-lead reflector panels that I use all the time. Pretty lightweight. It's got a nice little handle. Obviously, the form factor, it almost doubles the size of the light. Let's look at the parallel beam adapter in comparison to the S60 by its own. This is our full flood, and what we're going to be trying is this parallel beam adapter, which should get us nice and tight. So I'm going to go full spot here. So that's full spot, and stopwise 60th f11.9, so call that 16. And then throwing in the parallel beam adapter, survey says, oh yeah, that's a little bit spottier. Pretty cool. Let's go without it again. Just look at that change. Yeah, that thing kicks. There is also a very cool looking honeycomb which protects some of that spill light off the side of the lens. It shouldn't mess with it too much. Okay, yeah, it doesn't mess with the output. So that's with the grid on, grid off. Just helps contain it a little bit and takes care of any stray light from the sides of this huge lens. This lens has to be 6 inches across in the front. So at the hot spot, we were getting a 16 before, and now we are getting, that is bright. Oh, the anticipation is killing me. 22.6. stop and a half brighter than we were before. So that means if you're bouncing that into one of the no-LED mirrors, you get an extra stop and a half of light to play with out of a little 60-degree Fresnel, which is super impressive. Full spot. I'm flooding it out just to see what it does. Obviously, I'm losing a lot of intensity here. So yeah, so for bouncing into those reflectors, that is the way to go. Look at that. Beautiful. Maybe we'll do a whole other video on those reflectors in the future, but that is stop and a half. Can't beat that. All right, I realized there's something I forgot to show you that really does set these two lights apart. Number one, so I go into mode here, HSI. This iPhone can't even handle that color, but I have full RGB control on these little things. And it seems like quite nicely saturated colors as well as I'm going through the list here. So I've got HSI, I've got gel, mode, RGBW, I mean, like so many good things. Flash, lightning, cloudy, broken bulb, TV. I mean, super handy for a little battery light, candle mode with the projector or something. Yeah, super cool. There's also NFC pairing with the app here, and some other electronic controls that I'm not going to get into. But yeah, cool. All right, little summary. I think these things are pretty sweet. A little bit less output than the S60 buys, but you do gain full RGB control. I'm pretty certain wireless control as well. Battery power, a lot more flexible, I would say. More fragile. Again, I wouldn't drop it. Really impressive and unique little lights from Godox. Dig these things. Thanks for letting me try them out.